Hi, my name is Brandon and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. And today we're reading more from Michael A. Singer's The Untethered Soul and talking about change and transformation and how that applies to the kind of problems that we deal with in regular life and also in recovery from alcoholism and addiction. So, reading the first paragraph from chapter 9 in the book, he says, "The spiritual journey is one of constant transformation. In order to grow, you must give up the struggle to remain the same and learn to embrace change at all times. One of the most important areas requiring change is how we solve our personal problems. We normally attempt to solve our inner disturbances by protecting ourselves. Real transformation begins when you embrace your problems as agents for growth. In order to understand how this process works, let's examine the following situation." So he goes on to describe a situation where you have a thorn in your skin. And I won't go into as much detail as he does in the book with this analogy. But essentially he says, you've got a thorn in your skin and it's touching a nerve and it's very, very painful. Now you have two choices here. You can either go through the rest of your life protecting that area of yourself and going to great lengths to make sure nothing ever touches that area in order to hurt it. Or you can just take the thorn out. And that hurts for a second, but eventually that area heals and then the problem's gone. And so he says essentially that we're used to just leaving the thorn in and trying to protect that area rather than removing it. And he describes it like this. It turns out that the life of protecting yourself from your problem becomes a perfect reflection of the problem itself. You didn't solve anything. If you don't solve the root cause of the problem, but instead attempt to protect yourself from the problem, it ends up running your life. You end up so psychologically fixated on the problem that you can't see the forest for the trees. You actually feel that because you've minimized the pain of the problem, you've solved the problem. But it is not solved. All you did was devote your life to avoiding it. It is now the center of the universe. It's all there is. And there's something in that paragraph that's really important. You actually feel that because you've minimized the pain of the problem, you've solved the problem. And that's part of the thing that we have to remember in recovery is that eliminating or reducing pain associated with a particular problem does not mean that problem's been addressed. But a lot of times that's what we try to do. And that's especially what we did in our active addiction was we tried to minimize the pain of problems and then just move on. So kind of sweeping them under the carpet and hoping that nobody lifts up the carpet. Please don't lift up the carpet. There's a lot of crap under there. That's the way that we lived our lives in the past. And what Singer is saying in this passage of the book is we got to look at these problems and take them out at the root so that they quit causing these kinds of disturbances. So he describes this in an example about loneliness. He says, when you're lonely, you find yourself pondering what to do about your loneliness. What is it you can say or do in order to not feel so lonely? Notice that you aren't asking how to get rid of the problem. You're asking how to protect yourself from feeling it. You do this either by avoiding situations or by using people, places, and things as protective shields. You're going to end up just like the person with the thorn. The loneliness will run your entire life. You'll marry the person who makes you feel less lonely, and you'll think that's natural and normal. But it's exactly the same as the person who is avoiding the pain of the thorn instead of taking it out. You have not removed the root of loneliness. You've only attempted to protect yourself from feeling it. Should someone die or leave you, the loneliness would again disturb you. The problem will be back the moment the external situation fails to protect you from what's inside. Now, this particular example is a really good illustration of why a lot of people give the advice of when you're early in recovery, don't get involved in a relationship with another person. There's a lot of reasons that that's good advice. I'm not going to go into them all here. But one of the reasons is that a lot of times we try to use external relationships with other people to resolve inner pain and conflict instead of dealing with the inner pain and conflict directly. So what happens is if you get involved with a relationship with somebody, instead of dealing with your stuff and that person goes away, then all of a sudden you've got your stuff to deal with again and you're not prepared to do that. So it's important to really focus on, especially in early recovery, if you're about to enter a relationship with someone, making sure you really understand why you're entering that relationship. And that's why a lot of people say, you know what, in early recovery, focus on yourself. Focus on these areas where you need to remove some pain and disturbance. Focus on these areas where you're really having some problems and fix those for yourself before you involve another person in your life. So he goes on to talk about protecting ourselves, protecting these areas of disturbance, the thorn. I keep going here because I'm imagining the thorn in my arm. And he says, this is what people do. They let fear of their inner thorns affect their behavior. They end up limiting their lives just like someone living with an external thorn. Ultimately, if there's something disturbing inside of you, you have to make a choice. You can compensate for the disturbance by going outside in an attempt to avoid feeling it, or you can simply remove the thorn and not focus your life around it. Do not doubt your ability to remove the root of the disturbance inside you. It really can go away. You can look deep within yourself to the core of your being and decide you don't want the weakest part of you running your life. You want to be free of this. You want to talk to people because you find them interesting, not because you're lonely. You want to have relationships with people because you genuinely like them, not because you need for them to like you. You want to love because you truly love, not because you need to avoid your inner problems. How do you free yourself? In the deepest sense, you free yourself by finding yourself. You are not the pain you feel, nor are you the part that periodically stresses out. You are the one who notices these things. Because your consciousness is separate and aware of these things, you can free yourself. To free yourself of your inner thorns, you simply stop playing with them. So his idea, going back to a lot of the things we've talked about in discussions from this book, is that we really learn to free ourselves from these inner disturbances by noticing that we're noticing the inner disturbances and by reseating ourselves in our consciousness so that we're not getting dragged along by these disturbances. And as soon as we do that, we get the ability to let go of these things. Now, this relates very closely to the idea of from step 3, for those of you who are going through 12-step programs, where we surrender and we surrender our lives and our will over to our higher power. This is a very similar type of thing where we're stepping back and we're letting go of the things that are bothering us. We stop trying to control them. We stop trying to run the show. We just let go and observe these things. And that's what he says. He says, what can you do to solve this besides eating something, calling somebody, or doing something else that might quiet it down? What you can do is notice that you noticed. Your way out is just to notice who's noticing. The one who notices is already free. If you want to be free of these energies, you must allow them to pass through you instead of hiding them inside you. Goes on to talk about, for example, some of the most beautiful poetry and music have come from people who were in turmoil. Great art comes from the depth of one's being. You can experience these very human states without getting lost in them or resisting them. You can notice that you notice, and you watch how experiencing loneliness affects you. Does your posture change? Do you breathe slower or faster? What goes on when loneliness is given the space it needs to pass through you? Be an explorer, witness it, and then it will go. If you don't get absorbed in it, the experience will soon pass and something else will come up. Just enjoy all of it. If you can do this, you will be free, and a world of pure energy will open up within you. And the last thing that I want to read from this chapter is this is the part that really stuck out to me. The bottom line of all of this is you don't have to get rid of loneliness or any other of these disturbances. You don't have to get rid of them. You just cease to be involved with them. It's just another thing in the universe, like grass, cars, the stars. It's none of your business. Just let it go. That's what the self does. Awareness does not fight. Awareness releases. Awareness is simply aware while everything in the universe parades before it. So, a lot of times we get caught up in our emotions. We get caught up in whatever's going on in our head. We get absorbed in it, and it can wreak havoc on our day-to-day lives. And for those of us who are recovering from addiction, it can lead us right back to using again. And if we can just learn to let go and learn to watch these things happen and not try to control our lives to protect ourselves from the things that hurt us, but instead just observe what we're feeling and then let go, we'll find a lot of these problems that we've had that have caused great disturbance for us in the past simply pass on, and they go by, and we move on to the next thing. Try that today. See what happens when you allow yourself the freedom to not get involved with your problems, and report back. I'd be interested to hear about it. In the meantime, hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you back here tomorrow with more.